morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, February the 4th, 2020, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am live in Toronto, Canada. Where are you around the world watching Indiana Jones 5? Is it gonna happen? Will it happen? Probably not. This movie has been in development hell for, well, ever since Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which was released in 2008. But I am a big Indiana Jones fan, as many of you guys know. Big Harrison Ford fan, my favorite actor of all time. Again, I am not saying that he is the best actor of all time, but by me saying I'm not saying he's the best actor of all time is not me saying that he is a bad actor. I am just saying that I wouldn't necessarily put him up there with the likes of, a Daniel Day-Lewis or a Robert De Niro or an Al Pacino or, but certainly he is an icon and definitely a, was more than is, the Clark Gable of the new era of Hollywood, which sort of began in the 70s and 80s. And, he was one of those guys, and he's been my favorite actor ever since I was, since a little kid. I mean, I used to go to school in kindergarten. I had what I called my Han Solo pants. They weren't Han Solo pants, but they were just dark blue pants with a red stripe down the side. And I just, I practically wore them every single day. I've just been a big Harrison Ford fan for decades. And not to sound a little too, not to sound morbid here, but obviously he is older. He will be 78 this year. He's the same age as my father. My father passed away in 2011, but I know that they share the same birthday year, which is 1942. My dad's birthday was was obviously because he's no longer with us, May 3rd, 1942, and Harrison Ford's birthday, I believe, is July 13th, 1942. So very easy to remember, and big Harrison Ford fan. And of course, he's known for a lot of different roles, but the two most iconic being Han Solo and Indiana Jones. And, of course, he's gone on to do other great films like The Fugitive and Air Force One and Frantic and The Mosquito Coast and Witness. And I mean, the list goes, What Lies Beneath, 6 Days, 7 Nights, the list goes on. One of the greatest cinematic icons in terms of actors, legendary actors in the history of motion pictures. No doubt about it. And Indiana Jones is definitely... it's in the pop culture, right? It's like Rocky, it's embedded itself into the pop culture consciousness with three great films. I consider them all, they're all at the very least good movies. And one of them is spectacular. And then one is my fan favorite. And then one I can appreciate. The one that I think is spectacular is no doubt the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, from 1981. That is the quintessential B-movie swashbuckling, serials that George Lucas and Spielberg, that is the perfect example of what they were trying. That is exactly what Indiana Jones should be. Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of my favorite movies of all time. There is no doubt in my mind it is the best Indiana Jones movie. But my favorite Indiana Jones movie, I know that sounds kind of ironic, like it's a bit of a, but my favorite is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom from 1984. I just love the absurdity of that movie. And yes, it is a darker movie. And no doubt that it was the movie. It wasn't rated PG-13, I don't believe, but it was the movie that sort of, made the studios and the MPAA at the time kind of take notice and go, well, hang on a sec here. I think we need to introduce a PG-13 rating. And I forget what the movie was. There was a movie released after that was rated PG-13, but the Temple of Doom was certainly the catalyst for that. And it's my favorite Indiana Jones film because if you really were a swashbuckling, globe-trotting archaeologist, you wouldn't be fighting Nazis all the time. You would be getting yourself into all sorts of different kinds of situations and scenarios and meeting all sorts of kinds of women. And, it would be, you are globe-trotting around the world. You are an archaeologist. There's no doubt there are other artifacts and MacGuffins and things that you can find yourself really interested in it belongs in a museum. You got to get it for the museum. So it made sense to me that this was such a, now, although to be fair, technically it is a prequel. Technically, not technically. I mean, it is really, actually, it is a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark is 1936, I believe, says at the beginning of the movie. And Temple of Doom is 1935, I believe. So technically, well, it is a prequel, but nonetheless, you would be getting yourself into all sorts of kinds of different situations and scenarios. And I just love the absurdity. I love the adventure of Temple of Doom. I mean, the tagline, I have the poster up over here. I have the poster here, which I've had for 25 years mounted on a board. And I have a poster out in my hallway as well. But the tagline is, if adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones. And I mean, it's a hell of an adventure. You know what I mean? So I love that movie. Just love all the twists and turns and the minecart chase and the Molaram Sudaram, Kalima Shakti. I mean, it's just, everything, the occult and the darkness and the everything. It's just great shit, right? Great shit. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I think, is the fan favorite. Because, and this is not, I don't have any sort of, it's not like hard evidence to back this up. It's just sort of an insightful observation, perhaps. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade came out in 1989. I was 10 when it came out. I saw it in the movie theater. And I liked it, of course, right? But it is very much, it's a departure from Temple of Doom. And that was a creative choice they made because they felt that Temple of Doom was too dark. I mean, it's common knowledge that Spielberg and Lucas were both going through some sort of a relationship. I think Lucas was going through a divorce maybe, and Spielberg, something like that. So naturally, that darkness that surrounded their personal lives seeped into the Indiana Jones movie on purpose. It was an outlet for them. And they wanted to sort of get back to the lighter, funner sort of kind of side like Raiders. But I think they even leapfrogged over Raiders and made it almost like, I like The Last Crusade. I do like it. I do. Come on, it's an Indiana Jones movie. But even it is a little more tongue-in-cheek and a little more wink, wink, nudge, nudge than even Raiders was. And I always sort of, I mean, I can't, like at 10, I don't know if I felt this way, but in retrospect, as I became a teenager and obviously now an adult being 40, when I look at the three movies, I think it's my least favorite. Now, I love the adventure. I love the idea of trying to find, the Holy Grail and all that kind of stuff. I think that's fun. I love the chemistry between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford. Obviously, that's dynamic, that's dynamic and great. But there's just something about the overall flavor of the movie that just feels a little too bumpy, a little too much for me. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. Don't misunderstand me. It is a good movie. But there's just something about the flavor of it, the chemistry, the ingredient that just is kind of sitting there that I just was like, just is a little too maybe tongue-in-cheek for me. I would have liked it a little more serious. There's just certain moments that didn't really jive with me. So if I had to rate the original trilogy in terms of my favorite, it would be Temple, Raiders, and Last Crusade. Although Raiders is right up there, man. It is a fucking amazing movie. I mean, it is the better movie than Temple of Doom, 100%. If I was rating it in terms of best, it would be Raiders, Temple, and Last Crusade. And again, it's not like Last Crusade's a bad movie, but it just didn't, I don't know. It's just, I think it became the point I was trying to make by saying that I have no sort of evidence of this, it's just an insightful observation. I think I think one of the reasons why a lot of people really enjoy the movie is because, guys who are my age, and gals, of course, The Last Crusade may have been your first introduction into the world of Indiana Jones. It may have been the first Indiana Jones movie you saw, or the first movie you saw in the theater. It's very much like the H2O of the Indiana Jones franchise, right? And it, there's a lot to like there about The Last Crusade. And I think people like the relationship between the father and and I get all that. I do. I don't know. It was just a little too self-aware for me. Just a little too self-aware for me. But there's also a lot to love in that movie too. So, I do like it. And then, of course, that was the end. That was the end. What a great ending, right? The ending of The Last Crusade is exactly how you want to end a trilogy. There they are riding their horses, literally riding off into the sunset. Amazing, right? Amazing. Great shot. Well, that was a little off there. Let me start down an octave. There, that's better. I couldn't go that high. Great stuff, right? La 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 la. Great ending. There was no need to do more, but time goes on. 20 years go by, nearly, and then we get in 2008, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the fourth Indiana Jones movie. Harrison Ford. A lot of people back then thought he was too old. I didn't think so. No, he was older. He was 65, but he was in good shape. Listen, Harrison Ford has aged like a fine wine. Is he looking closer to 80 now? Cause he's 78 this year. Yeah. He's almost 78, but he's aged. I think we can agree, Indiana Jones aside, he's aged fairly well. Doesn't look like he's had any work done. He looks pretty good. I think we all can agree that we would love to look as old as, Harrison Ford when we hit almost 80, right? It's like Sly and Arnold. Like, come on. Looks pretty good. But he was 65. And certainly not traditionally what you would think of as a globe-trotting archaeologist running around. But looking at the movie, and again, Harrison Ford doesn't do stunts. Right? He's never done stunts. He does what he calls physical acting. So if you gotta, jostle with a guy, right? You're in the corner and you're grabbing onto each other and throwing up against a wall, or, doing this kind of stuff, or throwing a punch and stuff. That's something. Look, if you're in good shape, you're 65, you're 70, you're 75. If you're still in good shape, you can do that. Sly can do physical acting. Is he going to be leaping from a tall building? Is he going to be falling out a window? Is he going to be thrown out of a window? Well, no, but he wouldn't be doing that if he was 30, right? Are there certain things that maybe Harrison Ford can't do even with the physical acting now that he could do 30 years ago? Sure. But could he jostle with a guy in a corner? Oh, yes, Veronica. Yeah, I think he could probably even do that now. But he could certainly do that in 2007 when they were shooting the movie. The movie came out in 2008. I remember it very well. I was following it. I was excited about it. The movie came out and it was a disappointment. And for me, The Crystal Skull is not a disappointment because of the story. Although I think there is room for major improvement. The foundation of The Crystal Skull, which was the aliens, right, isn't in and of itself the issue. Could you have found a better story? Yeah, probably. Sure. Frank, it's no secret that Frank Darabont, the director of The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, arguably, especially Shawshank. Let's put The Green Mile aside and talk about Shawshank. Arguably one of the greatest motion pictures in the history of cinema. He also directed The Mist from 2007, has wrote for The Walking Dead, helped to write the screenplay for Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Frank Darabont should be due I wish Frank Darabont would do more feature film directing, but he doesn't. Anyway, he took a crack at writing the script for Indiana Jones 8. This was before it was titled. Spielberg liked it. Harrison Ford liked it. George Lucas didn't like it. No, that's not. No, I don't really want to. George Lucas is the executive producer. His company at the time was funding the film, would have been, or at least helping to fund the project. He created the character, originally Indiana Smith. If George doesn't like it, what are you going to do? Could Spielberg be a bitch and be like, George, fuck it? Yeah, he probably could. But he's not going to do that. And neither is Harrison Ford. So anyway, we got what we got. David Koepp wrote a script. We got what we got. The problem I found with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was there's a few things. The aliens were the least of my worries, but the problem was it wasn't gritty enough. Obviously, there was way too much reliance on CG. But also, I never found that Indiana Jones was in any real danger. So there was never a moment in the movie where I thought, holy fuck, how is he going to get out of this one? Never thought that, right? I wanted to see the sweat on his face and the dirt in his pores and the cuts on his hand and things like that. Saw none of that. I don't even think he took off his jacket. He wore his leather jacket the entire fucking movie, and then of course you get cheesy things like Shia swinging in the jungle with, the monkeys, right? I mean, it's just there's a lot else wrong with the movie that have nothing to do with aliens per se. The aliens might be like, the icing on the cake maybe, but I think if you had gotten everything else, I think if you had done a Raiders style movie and less trying to emulate and mimic the self-aware hokiness of The Last Crusade, and then some, I think if you'd gone back to more of a serious, not necessarily dark like Temple, but more of a serious thing like Raiders, I think the alien thing would have, it might have rubbed some people the wrong way, but if you'd gotten everything else right, might have been all right. The aliens was the least, there's so many issues with that movie. There were too many people with Indiana Jones. You had Indiana Jones, you had Marion, you had his son Mutt, right? And then you had, what's his face? Drawing a blank now. You had two other, the chat room will help me out. I'm drawing a blank. Ray Winstone? Winstone? Is that the actor's name? Damn it, I forget his name now. And then of course you had, you had this ensemble when it was, well, I know Ox is his name, but I'm Mac and Ox, so I'm talking about the actors' names. You had too many people, right? Too many people. And then Marion disappears for a bit and suddenly shows up. It just was listen, is it fun? Is it I just found that when you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's not winking at the audience. There's certain moments that might, but I never felt like when you look at Cate Blanchett, who's a wonderful actress, and I was all for her being a villain. I thought that was cool. Okay. But it's like she's a cartoon caricature of herself, right? It kind of feels like that. You don't get that sense with Belloc from Raiders. You totally believe that he's the guy he is. You believe this is a serious movie. It's a swashbuckling film that's got some wit. It's got sarcasm and wit, right? It's not the years, honey. It's the mileage. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have wit and charm, but at no point do you feel like it's a caricature of itself, and I sometimes feel, I felt that a little bit with Last Crusade, and I can certainly feel that with Crystal Skull. It's almost too much. And I didn't like that aspect of it. That's one thing I didn't like about the Crystal Skull. And then you combine, of course, the awful CGI in certain moments. Some was good. Some was good. Like, for example, Indiana Jones surviving in a fridge. That actually didn't bother me. When you combine it with everything else, it's like, what? Yeah, I get it. Totally get it. But that actually didn't really bother me that much. It's everything else around it. So many things. But I digress. I could go on and on here about that, but Indiana Jones 5. So here we are, right? Now, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was a box office success, made over $700 million at the worldwide box office, and was a success. There should have been an Indiana Jones 5 10 years ago. I don't believe there was because of the feedback of Crystal Skull, not because of the money. I think Spielberg was apprehensive. I think the backlash generally was, it wasn't the reception they were hoping for. Made a lot of money. And this is business. I mean, this is show business. At the end of the day, it's about the money. But there was something else on Indiana Jones. So now they want to do a 5. I don't believe this. We're just having trouble cracking the story. It's not fucking difficult to come up with an Indiana Jones movie. Somebody came up with one years ago. I think there was a book too about, Indiana Jones and the Lost City of Atlantis. There you go. Boom, do it. That's cool. You know what I mean? There's more, there's other variables at play than just we can't come up with an idea. It's been in development hell for the better part of a decade now. Lawrence Kasdan's son, Jonathan Kasdan, John, took a crack at the script. I think his idea had something to do, and I do stand to be corrected, has something to do with a runaway train or something in gold or something like that. But anyway, David Koepp, I think, had taken a crack at it again or something. But there was a article that just came out. The reason why I'm doing the show today, essentially, is because there was a report. Kathleen Kennedy was just asked about Indiana Jones 5. Hey, woman, is it happening? Like, what's going on? Excuse me. Well, this is according to slashfilm.com. Of course, other outlets carried it as well. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy offered a quick Indiana Jones 5 update at the BAFTA's red carpet, which we can read below. I'll read it to you. She literally says nothing. I mean, this is the typical cinematic part of what I call typical cinematic political rhetoric. It's like when you listen to sports athletes being interviewed, Now, I don't know if any of you guys watch hockey, but obviously being a Canadian, I'm a big hockey fan. I watch other sports too. But when you watch sports athletes being interviewed between periods or quarters or innings or whatever, right? It's like, so John, you're down by 3 goals here. So what do you guys need to do? The next period. Well, we just got to get out there. We just got to get out there. We got to, we got to get the puck down there. We got to get the puck in their end, and we just got to take some shots. We just got to take some shots, and we just got to put the puck in the net. We got to put the puck in the net, take some shots, and we just got to do that. We got to work hard. We got to keep going, and that's what we got to do. We got to put it down there and just get some shots in there. Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Thank you. He said fucking nothing. He said nothing. It seems like he's saying a lot, right? But he's saying nothing. And if you listen to sports athletes talk, they say nothing, about that kind of thing, in that kind of context, right? So here's Kathleen Kennedy on the red carpet, right? Here's Kathleen Kennedy, our sports athlete. So Kathleen, what's happening with Indiana Jones 5? I quote, well, we're working away. Working away, getting the script where we want it to be, and then we'll be ready to go. Harrison Ford will be involved. It's not a reboot, it's a continuation. He can't wait. He's absolutely up for it. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, it's not a reboot, it's a continuation. Yeah, but listen, reboot, continuation, Nothing was said there. This is the exact same position they've been in for the last 2 years. Nothing was said. So in other words, not a fuck thing is going on with Indiana Jones 5. They have a release date of July 2021. It's already February, and they don't even have a script. For them to make a July 2021 release, that movie has to go into production this summer. This summer. It is at least $150, $200 million film, right? It is, now it doesn't have to be, of course. I'm just saying, realistically, let's think about this, right? It's at least $150, $200 million picture, right? Massive amounts of pre-production work, massive amounts of production work, massive amounts of post-production work, right? You're not going to shoot an Indiana Jones movie in February and release it in July. It's just not going to happen. So, now, is it impossible not having a script now and still shooting this summer? Yeah, of course. But we're still working away on it. Harrison Ford's going to be 78 this July. 78. I'm somebody that in 2007, I said that I thought Harrison Ford was fine playing Indiana Jones. Yeah, he was 65, but I think he could pull it off. And he did. He pulled it off. It was fine. I think he could have been in a better movie with a better story, with better shit going on and giving him more to do and being, more Indiana Jones-ish. Like the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I know he didn't have his jacket on there. I know earlier I said he never took his jacket off. I'm talking about when we get into the crux of the actual present story rather than the prologue sort of that you see at the beginning of each Indiana Jones movie. The beginning of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull felt like Indiana Jones. I think that's why it didn't bother me that he put himself in a fridge. Yeah, maybe I wouldn't have done that, but he was running around on his own. He was sweating and his thing open, and it just felt more gritty. I believed it. 100%. Now, I don't know. It's hard for me to see an Indiana Jones movie that can be the Indiana Jones movie it needs to be with Harrison Ford 78, because it almost feels like, and I'm open to this idea. I said this a while ago, and I am open to this idea about taming down Indiana Jones, making it more of a mystery thriller where maybe he has to do some physical acting, but it's more about his wit and his smarts than it is his physical bronze. You know what I mean? It's not so much about the physical than it is more about the mental. It's not the brawn, it's the, It might work. Now, in that same article, or was it the same article or was it somewhere else? Let me see here. Slashfilm.com says the fifth film has gone through the hands of several writers, including David Koepp, John Kazan, and Dan Fogelman. And last we heard, it was back in Koepp's hands. Quote, "I'm working on it again," Koepp said in September. "We're still trying. And I think we've got a good idea this time. We'll see." Bob Iger even said a couple of years ago, he said, we're focused on, but we hope right now we're focused on a reboot or a continuum, and then a reboot of some sort. We'll bring Harrison Ford back, and then we'll have to figure out what comes next. We'll see. I'll tell you what comes next. Harrison Ford. I think that really at the end of the day is the problem with Indiana Jones 5. I think, to be fair, I think they're having a problem not figuring out what the story, what Indiana Jones could be doing. Because that's not hard to figure out. He's a globetrotting fucking archaeologist, and every one of his MacGuffins is always it's based in some truth, right? The Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, even the Shankara stones, I think I'm saying that right, from Temple of Doom, were based on real stones. Same with the crystal skulls from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, based on real shit that exists. So it wouldn't be hard to figure out what his MacGuffin would be. I think they're having a hard time figuring out this transition. Because if you have Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, I mean, dude, like, so are you making one last Indiana Jones and then passing the torch? You know, I mean, is that what's going to happen? And nobody wants it to be passed to Shia LaBeouf. Really, if you think, even though I think he's an amazing actor, and maybe if he hadn't been that Shia LaBeouf as we know and gotten into all sorts of shit, and had Kingdom of the Crystal Skull been better, maybe I'd feel differently. Maybe I'd be like, yeah, pass it to his son, carry the torch. But not right now. I don't feel that way right now. So, is Harrison Ford too old? Yes, he is. For the Indiana Jones that we know, yes. Now, is he too old to do physical acting? No, but we're talking about the believability. Do I believe that this, for all intents and purposes, 80-year-old man is beating the shit out of guys 40 years younger than him? Not really. I don't believe that. I want to believe that the writers are smart enough to know that if we're going to have Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, then we need to adapt. Even more so than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we really need to play into this now. And then what is this Indiana Jones movie? What is the identity of this? You know, because the audience is not going to believe that Harrison Ford can be running around doing all this. And then if he's not running around doing all this and he's calm, cool, and collected in every fucking scene he's in, and he gets himself into no crazy shit or doesn't even throw a punch, then it's not even Indiana Jones. It's like I'm watching I don't know what the hell I'm watching. Maybe I'm watching, you know, The Fugitive or something. I don't know. It just, you're at a point now where I almost feel like maybe you should recast and start new. And then you have to figure out who's that going to be. Now, I have never been a fan of Chris Pratt taking over the role of Indiana Jones because I don't believe he has the... Now, that doesn't mean he couldn't do it. I'm not saying that. But the Chris Pratt thing came to be because about 5 or 6 years ago, somebody photoshopped Chris Pratt's face because of his, you know, success in Guardians of the Galaxy and Jurassic World. And then there was Indiana Jones 5 talk. Then somebody photoshopped his face on a promotional image of Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, and Sean Connery from The Last Crusade. And it was Harrison Ford's body, his hands, everything, but it was Chris Pratt's face. And people were like, oh, wow, look. And I'm like, dude, you photoshopped my face on Harrison Ford's body. And everybody, let's get Dave McCrae. I mean, come on, you know. Maybe not quite. But Chris Pratt for me is too frat boyish. He's too jockish. I don't see him as Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones needs to have a level of wisdom and maturity about him, and I think Pratt. I wouldn't look at. I don't know. There's just something about. I mean, maybe, but there's just something about him that I don't see him Indiana Jones. You guys who watch me on a regular basis, you know that I've often thought that Hugh Jackman would have made a great Indiana Jones. I don't know about now because he's in his 50s. But I think Hugh Jackman would have. I think he's handsome, he's physical, he can be sarcastic, witty, charming. I could believe him as an Indiana Jones. Now I don't know. 10 years ago, yes. But is it too late for an Indiana Jones 5? It's not too late, but it is something that Harrison Ford's age, even more so, like I said, even more so than Crystal Skull, has to be acknowledged now. And I don't want an age joke every 5 seconds. If you have to make an age joke every 5 seconds just to tell the audience that you understand that this is fucking ridiculous, then maybe you should be casting somebody else. Maybe you should be casting somebody else. You know, Mutt in Crystal Skull, the joke that he says to Harrison Ford in his house there, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something like, yeah, you know, you're kind of old. You know, he's chewing gum, you know, and he's looking around his place. And he's like, what are you, like 80? You know? And then Indiana Jones is like, oh, thanks. You know, ha, 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 ha. Funny, right? And that was sort of it, really. And he was 65 then. Well, now he's almost 80. He is almost 80. So now and he looks 15 years older. He still looks good for his age, but I don't know anymore if I believe that he would give me a run for. I think I could probably kick the crap out of Harrison Ford. I think he would be tough. He would be tough. He's 6 feet tall, 85 pounds. Not that but I think at the end of the day, I might be able to take him. Maybe not. I mean, who knows? He's a strong dude. 30 years ago, he'd probably kick my ass. The believability needs to be there. Harrison Ford will always be my Indiana Jones. Always. I grew up with him as Indiana Jones, right? But I'm not under this false illusion that nobody else could ever play Indiana Jones. Of course not. Of course not. Yes, somebody can and will do justice to the character. But that's the $1 million question. Do we continue it with Harrison Ford, it looks like that's what they want to do. But yeah, I think they're trying to crack the code, not the story of what Indiana Jones is doing or what he's chasing. That could be fucking it's got to be a good story, right? It has to be a good story. But that at the end of the day is probably relatively easy to figure out. It's how do we make this believable? Because it can't be the high octane adventure of Temple of Doom, but you know what? It should be. And that's if you're going to make an Indiana Jones movie, it should be that. It should be, it's an adventure. If adventure has a name, it must be Indiana Jones, right? It's not if wheelchairs have a name, it must be Indiana Jones. I mean, that's not what this is here, right? Come on. There's got to be a level of believability here. Now, again, you can create movie magic. But it's not that they can't create a movie where it looks like Indiana Jones is kicking ass. Yeah, they can do that. They can have stunt doubles and stand-ins and shit, sure. But we know he's 80. So it's kind of like, I don't believe this. And then, of course, there's always the thing of, well, do you de-age him? Do you do a movie maybe that's something they've thought about. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but it has crossed my mind that maybe they set it in the 50s again, or they set it in the 40s and they de-age him. I'm not a fan of doing that because it's not, I don't know, it feels chintzy to me. But it's something that I have no doubt has maybe crossed their mind to make it more visually believable. Well, you see, he's actually only 54 here. Is that something they want to do or touch? I don't know. But it's the believability is the biggest problem. And I think that's probably what they're trying to figure out. I don't understand. If they can't figure out the story, then there's a certain level of incompetence, which is no surprise to a lot of you, I'm sure, over at Lucasfilm. Come on. This is not difficult to figure out an Indiana Jones movie, right? But I can certainly see the issues that arise when you have to figure out how to justify a high-octane Indiana Jones adventure with an 80-year-old Indiana Jones. That I can see being more tricky, right? Because you don't want to recast. You want to give... Listen, Harrison Ford will always be Han Solo as well, but Han Solo was a complementary utility player, right? He was part of an ensemble. Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford's baby. He's one of the most iconic cinematic characters in the history of motion pictures. It's all his. Not that Han Solo isn't all his, but he shares the screen with the likes of, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and Darth Vader. And I mean, come on, he's my favorite Star Wars character, but there's arguably 10 others that are more iconic or more loved, right? I mean, let's, be honest, right? Indiana Jones is all his own. I think they probably want to give him a proper send-off, a swan song. But what is that? Do you make just a final Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford, end it, and then reboot it with somebody else? Or do you make a final Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford and we actually see him passing the torch to somebody else? And then you continue with that? So the reboot of Indiana Jones in 2025, let's say, is part of the same timeline and canon? Because there's two ways you can do it, right? You can have an Indiana Jones 5 where you send off Harrison Ford, into the stratosphere and you end it, and then you begin Indiana Jones again as if the other films never happened, right? It's like, it's a remake, essentially. You can do that. Or you can have Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, send off, and he passes the torch to that next person who then continues it. I think that's what they're trying to figure out. Because you cannot escape it. I mean, he's almost 80. He looks good. But we have to keep that in mind. And look, I'm not saying that you cannot create a movie and justify in the movie and make it believable that this 78-year-old guy is kicking the shit out of guys 40 years, younger than him. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm not saying you can't do that. I saw somebody in the chat say, Liam Neeson's 67. That's right, he's 67. Let's have this conversation again in another decade and see how Liam's doing, right? I don't know. I think you definitely can do it, but it gets trickier and trickier and harder as you get older. That's the reality. It's the reality. It's not that a 78-year-old couldn't kick my ass. It's not that a 78-year-old couldn't kick the shit out of... It's not... Again, these things, they're not mutually exclusive to each other. The old age and being, I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying the older you get, the harder it does become to justify. It doesn't become easier. It doesn't become easier. It will always become harder. It might be marginal from year to year, but those years add up. And we're not talking about a sequel to, Working Girl or a sequel to, The Mosquito Coast. We're talking about a sequel to one of the greatest adventure films in the history of cinema. It's different. So the justification needs to be there for the audience. I believe this. And he already was doing some physical things in The Crystal Skull. He was. But even that movie, it was like, where's the sweat? Where's the grime? Where's the, the swinging and the leaping and the... That was 12 years ago. And they don't even have a script. I don't think it's too late for a Harrison Ford Indiana Jones movie. But I do think it is too late for that kind of Harrison Ford Indiana Jones movie. And then that makes me nervous because I think, what kind of Indiana Jones movie are we going to get? But if it's a really good story and they make it feel organic, I'm open to the idea of a final Indiana Jones movie being more of a, spy thriller where we do see him, get in a few tussles. There's a bit of that, you know what I mean? But the story's so compelling. And the adventure is so interesting and that you believe it. You're on board with it. You're like, okay, But Temple of Doom Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark Indiana Jones, even Last Crusade Indiana Jones, maybe. I mean, I'm open to it, man. I'm open to somebody proving me wrong. I'm open to David Kep. David, if you're watching, he's not watching. Maybe he is, he's not watching. But if he ever does, David, I'm open to it, man. Prove me wrong. Write a script about an 80-year-old Indiana Jones kicking my ass and your ass and everybody in the chat room's asses. And have us go, I totally buy that. Totally believe it. I'm open to it because I don't want it to fail, right? If they make an Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford, it's not like I want it to fail. I mean, in the back of my mind, am I going, well, okay. But I'm rooting for it. I'm pulling for it. I want it to do well. I want it to be really good. So I'm like, all right, man, prove me wrong. Do it. Let's see it. Let's see what you got. But I think the identity of Indiana Jones a little bit, the identity of the type of movie it is, may have to change a little bit for this presumably final installment in Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones career. You know, which is disappointing to me. And I think it's because people love the swinging and the shirt open and the sweat and the it's not like he can't punch people when he's 80. Of course he can. But you know, the thing is too, I remember this I'm paraphrasing this, but it was an interview with Rowan Atkinson, and he's of course Mr. Bean, right? He was asked, it was a couple of years ago, he was asked, are you done with Mr. Bean? You know, are you going to do any more? Of course, Rowan's well into his 60s, right? He looks a lot older. And he says, I'm paraphrasing, okay? But he says something to the effect of, you know, you never say never. He said, but I think I've done all I've been able to do with Mr. Bean. You know, there's not much I haven't done. I think we've kind of been there, done that. He said, but, and also too, the older you get, the less funny it becomes and the more sad it becomes. Because you're no longer seeing a 30-year-old, yes, you know, and it's funny. And then it's like all you see is this old man. And it's almost like, that's so sad. You know, obviously you would still laugh because, you know, it's Mr. Bean, but I just mean that the perception, you know, when you look at it, it's because he's old now, you know? And so that perception as men age, and women too, but men especially because of the physicality of certain things, you know, it's not that they can't make it believable, but you know, if Harrison Ford's 80, it looks like an 80-year-old guy, you know, tussling, and it might look unintentionally funny, you know, and maybe sad, and you don't want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants it, and they know that. I mean, they would never do something that would embarrass Harrison Ford. They wouldn't do that. But it just feels like it's, you know, I don't know. But, you know, you look at the way he looks in that new movie that's coming out with the dog. I can't believe they fucking Into the Wild, I think it's called. Isn't that what it's called? I can't believe they CGI'd that dog. What? Anyway, I understand why they did, but come on. You know, he looks good, right? He looks good. You know, mind you, he's got a nice full white beard, but certainly, you know, he looks good. Sure. It's not that it's impossible. It's just I get worried because I could already see the beginnings of an Indiana Jones the physicality of the Indiana Jones identity starting to sort of tame itself just a little bit in Crystal Skull. And now we're 12 years removed from that, and he's 80 almost, and it's kind of like, what is this going to be? But maybe it's an opportunity, and maybe they're going to write an amazing fucking script. Maybe they'll get 3 more fucking movies. Maybe there's a transition, but then it's not Indiana Jones. But yet it is Indiana Jones, but it's not. I don't know. Maybe they're going to transition and it becomes more like a Sherlock Holmes character. But who wants that? Right? You know what I mean? That's not Indiana Jones then, is it? it's an interesting sort of, it's interesting, the things that they're up against and how to do this organically and to have it believable is interesting to me. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but it's fascinating nonetheless. So that's kind of how I feel about it. I think it may be time to look for somebody else. But I certainly am open for one last swan song from Harrison Ford, as long as it feels like an Indiana Jones movie. And that doesn't mean that you can't, make him more of a spy and using more of his wit than his brawn, right? I mean, that doesn't mean, and that doesn't mean that wouldn't be amazing. But I just don't want it to, I don't know. It's bittersweet in a lot of ways, isn't it? Because I think everybody here, the Call of the Wild, thank you, Lauren Downing. I think everybody here would agree that it's not that we don't want Harrison Ford to come back, right? I mean, if in a perfect world, I think we'd all be like, well, yeah, if it was 20 years, yeah, of course, he's Indiana Jones. But I think most of us are kind of like, well, yeah, but I don't know. Like, okay. Really? You got something now? And maybe they'll blow us away. Maybe they'll create something and release something where we're like, wow, that was actually really good. So good that maybe it inspires another sequel with Harrison Ford just doing that. Who knows? But Indiana Jones 5, as is at Indiana Jones, like the guy in the thumbnail on this video, I don't know, man. That's like, woo. I don't know. It's crazy. So we'll have to see. My fingers are crossed, but this whole idea that they're close. They've been saying that for the last 5 or 6 years. It is in development hell. It's in development hell. And I don't think it's a priority at all, because I think if it was, they would have done it by now. But I think their area of issues may arise in the fact of, we want Harrison Ford to come back, but we know that this is probably his last one. So what do? Who do we pass the torch even to? Or do we pass the torch in that movie? Or do we just end it, move on, reboot it, remake it with a new character? And so you are passing the torch more metaphorically that way, right? You are actually, because a new actor is coming in, but it's not in the same canon. It's not the same timeline. So it's more of a symbolic sort of passing the torch. Whereas in the new Indiana Jones movie, you could almost literally pass the fedora, right? Almost like what you thought was going to happen at the end of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but you could actually do that kind of thing now. Not necessarily with Mutt, but you could sort of maybe do that now. But then that's going to rub somebody the wrong way. Fuck that! I don't. You know how people are. I don't know, man. It's pretty crazy stuff. But those are my thoughts, at least right now, on Indiana Jones 5 and how I kind of feel about it. Hey, if you're watching after the fact, comment below and let me know your thoughts and what you think of Indiana Jones 5 and kind of, what I've been talking about here and the things we've been kind of discussing here over the last almost hour or so. So we're going to jump over to the chat room here. But before I do, some super chats came in. Let me get to them. Todd Fayer says, "Hey, Dave, I know you love Elm Street Part 2, but I found it to be the worst Elm Street movie besides Elm Street 6, and lots of people agree. So why do you love Elm Street 2? Because it is so cheesy and it's a true B movie." Well, the reason why I love Elm Street Part 2 is because of the darkness and the layers to the darkness that surround it. Freddy is arguably, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 arguably has the scariest Freddy out of all the movies, even over Part 1. I love the way he looks, and I love his voice. I love the makeup. I love his physicality. I think the opening of Elm Street 2 has the best dream sequence in any Elm Street movie, in terms of actual dream, not necessarily kill, but in terms of the surreal sort of dream and the bus and him coming up with the knives over the back, over the back of the seats, and and they're on top of it, and the things are falling away. It's so surreal. I'd love to get a big, gigantic photo of that and just hang it in my studio here. It's just amazing. I love that. The homosexual subtext that is there. I've grown to sort of appreciate, even though the writer says, "Oh, I didn't know it was there," to fuck off, bullshit. I don't believe that at all, by the way. I don't believe it at all. I think he knew very well it was there. I don't know how you write a movie like that and not know it's there unless you're completely brain dead. No disrespect to the writer, but I just don't buy it. Sorry. I don't buy what you're selling. And of course, you know, I think as I've matured and I've been able to look at that more objectively, is it needed? No. Was it risky for 1985? Absolutely. Is it more accepted today? Absolutely. Is that part of the reason why maybe I appreciate it more? Perhaps. But I was a young kid in 1985 anyway. I was 6. So I just like the possession angle to it. And Freddy there always is a sexual angle to Freddy. That's one of the things that I often tell people, and I talked about this last night on Two Dudes and Some Bullshit, that you know, Freddy was a child murderer. And then somewhere along the line, it was alluded to that he was a child molester, and people don't like that. Well, and I agree. I don't think you needed to say that or even allude to it. The fact that you are a child murderer, you don't want to murder me, you want to murder my children. You're obsessed with children. In and of itself is fucking weird. So you don't need to allude to him being a child molester because he probably was anyway. There probably was something weird or sick going on anyway. Now, we don't know that for sure. It's not, you know, but so you don't need to say that because him just murdering children anyway is fucking weird. Right? I mean, murder's weird, but I'm just saying, right? It's specifically kids. It's a niche, sick, twisted area. So the idea, when I say children, obviously children, teenagers. So the sick sort of sexual subcontext that he has in Elm Street 2 is fascinating. It's an extra layer of creepy and dark that is just uncomfortable. Are there cheesy moments in it? Yeah. Jesse dancing on the bed and doing his, of course there is. But there's a lot of cheesy moments in a lot of those movies, you know. So it didn't bother me. I don't think it's well, I don't know. I mean, it's become a favorite of mine. So that, I mean, that in a nutshell is why I like part 2, in a nutshell. I could go on, but for the sake of time here. Thank you for the super chat, Todd. Really appreciate it, buddy. JT, the movie maker, sends in a super chat, says, hey, thanks for doing the stream. I'm an Indy fan more than anything, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Well, you got my thoughts, JT, the movie maker, or Jay, the movie maker, I should say. Really appreciate you sending in your super chat. Big G says, Gremlins is what made the MPAA bring new PG-13. Well, I beg to differ, my friend. I would look that up. Todd Fair sends in another super chat and says, hey Dave, do you believe Indiana Jones 4, the Crystal Skull, the Crystal Shit Skull was worse than Halloween 5? I believe even Halloween Resurrection was better than Indy 4. What are your thoughts? Definitely not. I think they're too much worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then Howard D sends in a super chat. Howard, did you send in anything, Howard? Or did you just send in a $2 super chat? For some reason, I can't see it. Let me go back here and see if I can see it. Ah, there it is. He says, hey, Dave, just popped in to say, yes, it's too late. Yes, it's too late. Awesome. Yes, it's too late. It is definitely, well, you know, there are a lot of people that feel that way, man. There are a lot of people that feel it is definitely too late. Jason Meyer says, hey, Joey, how's this for a wet dream? Yeah, we were watching Elm Street 3 last night. Obi-Wan Kenobi says, do you think recasting will have the same problem as the young Han Solo movie? Well, in today's, yes. I don't, do I think there's going to be the outrage? Yes, of course, because it's the culture we live in. Ah, fuck off! That's just what we live in now. I mean, that is the world we live in. So do I? Yes, I do. Yes, 100%. You cannot escape it. So, But do I think that you could recast a younger Indiana Jones? Yes. I think Indiana Jones, it can't be someone in his 20s. I don't want to see a young Indiana Jones movie. I don't give a fuck. I don't want to see it. Harrison Ford was already 39 when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. So maybe he was 38 when he shot it. Okay. So he was basically 40 for all intents and purposes. And the reason why you need somebody who's like at least late 30s, early 40s is because there needs to be a sense of life experience there. There needs to be somebody who's already been through shit. Raiders of the Lost Ark was not the first adventure that he had been on. It's our first introduction into his adventures. And Temple of Doom was not his first either. I know Temple technically is a prequel, right? But that wasn't his first adventure. He'd been doing this for maybe 15 years, right? So we're just getting a window into who this guy is. So he can't be 24, right? He's got to be at least 35, at least maybe 40 to be better, right? Because he has to possess a certain sense of wisdom, a certain sense of life experience, a certain sense that it's not the years, honey, it's the mileage. Somebody who's 23, I don't believe him. Dude, you're 20 fucking 3, okay? You haven't been through. Now, listen, does age necessarily equate to wisdom? Nope. No. There are a lot of people who can be 23 and been through a lot of shit, 100%. But generally speaking, that's not the case, generally. So it becomes more believable if it is somebody it's more believable that they possess a certain level of life experience, wisdom, and authority, right? They're in front of a university teaching, right? When you look at Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he looks like a 40-year-old guy, tall, handsome, physically fit, right? I don't want to see, I don't know, young, I don't know. I don't want to see somebody that looks like Bieber as Indiana Jones. I don't believe it. So, what was the question? Anyway, I got on a tangent there. Do you think, the Han Solo thing? Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, but it's of course it's going to piss people off. Of course it will. Everybody gets, it's outrage culture. It's the world we live in, man. The world we live in. All right. Bunch of super chats came in. Let's see here. Classic Halloween says, David, I wish I could shrink myself and live under your hat and absorb your cinematic brilliance. I could even clean your hair. I appreciate the compliment. That's a great compliment. I appreciate that. I don't think I'm brilliant. I appreciate that. I just talk about what I observe and what I'm passionate about and what sort of, I absorb myself into the industry, and into learning as much as I can about the things that I'm interested in. And just, always trying to give a different perspective of what might be going on, yeah, it's fun. Definitely fun. Oh, I don't know. Looks like somebody's calling me. Let me see here. So anyways, I do appreciate the super chat and I appreciate the compliment. Thank you so much. Frank Riker says, even though he would have been 49, would you have liked to see River Phoenix as Indiana Jones? Oh, he's a great actor. He was a great actor. It depends, right? It depends on where is he in his life, right? Is he in shape? Did he stay clean? Does he not look good? Does he kind of look like Edward Furlong now? I mean, who knows, right? I mean, but in a perfect world, if he was like, another Leonardo DiCaprio out there, maybe I might be open to that. I would have had to have seen what kind of an actor he was as an adult. Because we only saw him as he was he died in 92, I think. How old was he? River Phoenix, was it 92? He died 93. He died in 93. So he was 23. He was 23. So still relatively young. I would have liked to have seen what happened to him, like if he had made it through the 90s and the 2000s, like, as a man, right? When you're 23, yeah, you're a man, technically, you're an adult, but you're not a man. I mean, even our brains are still developing until we're 25. We're 25 when our brains sort of start to, kind of cease. So I would say that that's an interesting question, Frank, and I would be open to that. That's interesting because he was talented, but I wouldn't necessarily want to, just because he played a young Indiana Jones at the beginning of The Last Crusade, I wouldn't necessarily automatically think that he's the right choice, but certainly he was a very believable young Indiana Jones. He had the mannerisms down, the subtle nuances and things like that. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. But depending on where he is at that time. Brandon Barry sends a super chat. Dave, Chris Pine for Indy. Chris Pine? Yeah, maybe. I would be open to having him come in for an audition. Yeah. Or talking to him at the very least, getting his ideas and senses for the character. You know what I mean? That might not be a bad idea. Might not be. Certainly, how old is Chris Pine now? Hey, Google, how old is Chris Pine?
Chris Pine is 39 years old.
39. Okay, yeah. Okay. Maybe. That's something that I would be... Oh, wait, we're here. That's something that I would be open to. Like an audition, maybe an audition. And again, it's not that Chris Pratt couldn't do it. It's not that he couldn't do it. It's just that at the time that people were losing their minds over the idea of him doing it, the things that I've seen, I just was like, hey, he's too frat boy, jock boy to me. He would be a kid in Indiana Jones's class. He'd be one of those guys in his class. He wouldn't be Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? That's how I felt at the time. But, that was, we see him grow as an actor, do different roles. Maybe, right? Who knows? But yeah, I was never on board with that. Let me see. Chris Baber sends in a super chat. Thank you, buddy. Says if he can survive his own plane crashing, then who knows what he can pull off. Bradley Cooper could maybe pull it off. Bradley Cooper, maybe, yeah. You guys are in the right, you're in the right ballpark for me. When you're thinking of certain guys, you're in the right ballpark. But that's true. That is very true. If he can, that's true. And he literally did do that. I mean, Chris is right. What was it? 2015, 2016? When Harrison Ford's engines failed on his plane and he had to turn around. He was trying to get back to the Santa Monica airport, but he landed on a golf course. And obviously that was 2015. It was, because it was the year, it was before the, I think it was. Yeah, it was the year The Force Awakens came out. Yeah, it was 2015. Yeah, that was scary. That was scary. I remember that. Yeah, but you're right, man. He's tough. He's a tough dude. Big G says Tom Selleck should play Indy. He's 75 and good too. I don't think Tom Selleck should play Indiana Jones, but Tom Selleck was George Lucas's first choice to play Indiana Jones, as you guys know. You Indiana Jones fans already know this, but Tom Selleck backed out because of his contract with Magnum PI, and I don't think that was a bad choice. I mean, okay, sure, he didn't become Indiana Jones, which but there's still no guarantee that Raiders of the Lost Ark would have been as successful with Tom Selleck anyway, but it probably would have done well. I could totally see Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones. He had the right sort of, but I think he still did pretty good. Just a little bit. Okay, he said no to Indiana Jones, but he's like, I got to do this Magnum show. And this Magnum show obviously catapulted him into stardom and became one of the most iconic television shows in history. So, I mean, it's not like he, said no and then went off and did a show that didn't go anywhere. And it's kind of like, fuck, that was a mistake. No, not at all. It wasn't really a mistake at all. But yeah, now he looks good for his age. Tom Selleck ages like a fine wine. I mean, he's brilliant. I'd cuddle with Tom Selleck. He looks so amazing. Not really. But he looks great. You know what I mean? Fantastic. Frank Riker says, unfortunately, with the big name, Indiana Jones is, you need a Hollywood name as the lead. I would say that is true. I don't think that you necessarily want to cast a complete unknown, but you don't necessarily have to cast somebody who is relatively a household name, like a Chris Pine or a Pratt or even a Hugh Jackman. But definitely somebody with the on-screen. You need somebody with dynamic on-screen presence that can possess a sense of not just the sarcasm and wit of Indiana Jones, but the vulnerability of Indiana Jones as well. You know, a certain level of boyish charm, you know, but he's a man, you know, and he's not a frat boy. He's a man, you know. But you're right. I don't think they're going to go for an unknown. I'd be surprised if they did. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm just skeptical on what they're going to do. You know, I don't know what. I mean, I really think they're going to try and make Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford. But what then what? Right? Like, it's like Robert Englund and Freddy. Like, do you just do one? Robert's not going to be doing 4 more. He's not going to do that. You know, is there a literal passing of the glove? You know, where some sort of person takes over? Or is it just you end it and you start over again? I think they should just recast Freddy. I just think that's what they should do. And I think probably it's getting really close, if not way past its expiry date now. The same thing with Harrison Ford. The bottom line here is, for me, and maybe I'm a bit biased, obviously, because Harrison Ford's my favorite actor, but I am totally open for Harrison Ford returning as Indiana Jones, but you better solve that issue. That issue of, when I watch this movie, it better feel like Indiana Jones, while at the same time solving the issue of, I totally buy that this 80-year-old guy is able to do this. You know, I totally believe it. You know, you have to solve those issues, because if you don't, we have a problem, you know, and that's where I think it's at right now. Brandon Barry sends in a super chat, says, and we don't need a Harrison Ford impression. No, not at all. Oh, bang on. No. You just have to, you have to do what's his face there? Is it Edgerton? Taron Egerton? How do you fucking say his name? I forget how you say his name now. Anyway, he didn't do a Han Solo impression, like a Harrison Ford impression. He brought the essence of I totally believe that was Han Solo younger. Totally believed it. And he wasn't doing a Harrison Ford impression. He was just bringing the sense of the character there. And that's what needs to be done with Indiana Jones. You have to bring that sense. Oh, that's right. Alden Ehrenreich. That's right. I was thinking of the other guy. That's right. Alden Ehrenreich. That's right. Yeah. He brought the sense of Solo there, right? He wasn't doing a Harrison Ford impression. The same thing needs to be done with Indiana Jones. Now, Alden Ehrenreich, I think, is too young to be Indiana Jones, but certainly it's that kind of thing. You need somebody who can bring that sense there. You know, you wait another 10 years or so, maybe he's the right age. I don't know. But I agree. No Harrison Ford impression. It's the same way. It's the same mindset that I'm approaching Dylan's new Nightmare. I'm not going to go into it trying to do a Robert Englund impression. I just want to, I have to make it my own, but I got to bring the essence of the character there. So when you watch me, you will say, well, this isn't Robert Englund, but it's definitely Freddy Krueger, right? I totally believe that that's Freddy. And not everybody's going to like what I do. No, not everybody is. It's fucking shit. Yeah, that's fine. It's fucking shit, man. Oh, that was Halloween. But it's that kind of thing, right? It's that kind of thing where you want to be able to look at the character that I'm doing and you're like, oh, that's totally Freddy Krueger. You know what I mean? That's what needs to be done. That's what needs to be done. Not an impression of Freddy Krueger. Because that's important. That's really, really important. Chris Babers sends a super chat. Keanu or Common as Indiana Jones? If not, then Betty White. You know what? I think we should go with Betty White. I think we should go with Betty White as Indiana Jones. Or maybe not Betty White. I mean, maybe even, maybe. Oh, yeah. You know what? I think we should dig up the grave of Estelle Getty and get her in there and just have her on strings. And this turned really morbid. I love you guys. Lead Poisoning says, Dave, what do you think of the Indiana Jones TV series they had on television long ago? I used to watch it, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Yeah, I watched it. That was back in the early 90s, I think, right? I watched it. I did. It was, I wasn't a huge, there was actually an episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles where Harrison Ford makes an appearance as Indiana Jones. That was actually the last time he played Indiana Jones prior to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There's a bit of trivia there for you. If it ever comes up, prior to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, when was the last time Harrison Ford donned the fedora and all that kind of stuff? Don't say The Last Crusade, because it's not true. It's actually an episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And you can YouTube this. He's driving, I think, a pickup truck in the snow or something. He's got a beard. He's got his hat on, and he goes. It's cool. It's cool to see him that way. It makes me wish that he would have done more Indiana Jones movies, even though, The Last Crusade bookends that trilogy beautifully, and the message and the moral and everything. Seeing him in that episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles makes me wish that it's so cool. He was so good. He's so good in that role. Love me some Indiana Jones. Jay, the movie maker, sends a super chat, says, Dave, this is very off topic, but have you heard about the test screening reaction of H Kills? I have heard about it, and I don't really have any reaction to it. My reaction is simply this. I think it's good. Obviously, you always want to hear positive things coming out of a test screening, but there have been a plethora of examples over time of positive reviews of test screenings to movies that are garbage, and vice versa. Garbage, reviews to test screenings to movies that turn out to be good. Don't put so much stock into test screenings, because it can be a very subjective experience. Things can still continue to change. It's a small group of people that are saying they liked something, right? It's not, millions or thousands of people. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to like it, but to become so emotionally invested into the result of a test screening is ridiculous. There is a great YouTube video on YouTube, narrated by the director of, I forget the guy's name now. It's directed by the guy who did Shazam and Annabelle, that Annabelle one, and Lights Out. I forget his name now. Is it David something? Forget his name. The chat room will let me know. Anyway, he did this great 5-minute video on YouTube about how test screenings mean shit. And he's had a few of them, and what it's all about. And I've taught David Sandberg. Thank you very much, Jay, the movie maker. Go watch it, because it's insightful. I've talked about a lot of the things that he mentions in that video here on this channel over the last number of years. But obviously, being somebody who's made several Hollywood films and no doubt has had Hollywood test screenings himself, if you don't want to listen to me, go listen to him, because he'll tell you exactly what goes on and why at the end of the day, it really doesn't mean anything. You always like to hear that a supposed test screening did well. Okay, well, that's good. That's better than not hearing that that it did shit. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind. Let me see here. Frank Riker, super chat. Thanks, Frank. Says, I always thought that Humphrey Bogart would have kept going as Nick Spade if he didn't die. Maybe Indy needs to stop too. You cannot copy great. Oh, maybe, man, you might be right. Now, I think there's always, because of the type of story and the type of adventure serials that Indiana Jones is, it's very much like a 1930s James Bond, right? There's that, in theory, when you look at the formula of Indiana Jones and the formula of James Bond, in theory, it's not unprecedented to think that, we could just recast Indiana Jones and just continue him doing these swashbuckling, globe-trotting adventures. Well, yes, I guess so, you could. But, maybe you're right. Maybe there's a reason why we're now approaching our 25th Bond movie and we only have 4 Indiana Jones movies and arguably only 3 that are good. So, maybe that's a sign right there that, maybe this isn't the ongoing, changing of the guard every 4 or 5 movies that for some reason people think that it can be. People have thought that it could be that for years. Maybe it can't be. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is something that you just need to let go. It's an interesting thought, man. It is. I would be okay with it. I think I would be disappointed that they left Indiana Jones. I think I would be disappointed that Crystal Skull was the last one. And it's not that there aren't redeeming qualities in the movie. There are. There's a few things I like. That's good. That's a good shot. That's funny. Things like that. But as a whole, it would be disappointing to me that that's the last one to leave it on. It would, if they can make it work, dude, if they can make an Indiana Jones 5 that capitalizes and solves all the issues that I've been talking about in this video, if they can do it and then end it, Harrison Ford swan song kind of thing. All right. Like of course. Yeah. Let's do it. But I'm so worried that I'll be watching the movie and seeing him put on the fedora and his whip and he's like, all right, let's fucking do this. It's like, I don't want it to become like how Rowan Atkinson said, like, it's kind of sad now, as you get older, it's kind of sad. Like, oh, that poor Mr. Bean. He doesn't look like a funny guy. He looks like a sad old man who has dementia. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what it kind of could look like the older that Rowan Atkinson gets, and you don't want that kind of thing to take over with Indiana Jones, So yeah, hard to believe that he's getting up there now, man. That's going to be another one. That's going to be hard for me. I mean, I'm hoping he's got another 10 years, but that's going to be a hard one for me. Harrison Ford, that's going to be hard. That's going to be a hard one. That'll be like, I mean, obviously it won't be like losing my parents, but in some ways it might be the next hardest thing. Robin Williams was tough for me too. But Harrison Ford's going to be tough. I'm dreading that day, man. I'm dreading it. I think Spielberg would be tough too. Crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. Okay, just going back here, make sure I got all the super chats. I think I did. Let me go over here. Yes, I think I did. I appreciate you guys sending those in and supporting the channel that way. You guys are amazing. Vegas Courier says, one review pokes fun at you. One review pokes fun at me. At me? At Annabelle Creation he did? One review pokes fun. Oh, maybe you're talking to somebody else. I'm not sure. Obi-Wan Kenobi says, I feel like Indy could be like like an Alec Guinness Obi-Wan Logan character who teaches and then recruit their experience. Okay. Well, now let's keep in mind, Logan... And you see, Logan was more physical than Obi-Wan Kenobi was. The Alec Guinness Obi-Wan, right? I think there's a big difference even between Logan and Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan in terms of the physicality of the character. I get the principle of what you're talking about, though, and that is one way to do it. But even that, if that's what you want to do, and you want to have a literal sort of passing of the whip, you got to start thinking again, who is it going to be to, right? Who is going to feel like because when you pass on iconic roles like that, you got to think about, like, if it's not somebody Indiana Jones is related to, then he's not Indiana Jones. Think about that, right? That's something I should have said earlier in the stream. He's not Indiana Jones, right? He's Henry Jones Jr. That's his name. Indiana was a nickname that his dad gave him because that's what they named the dog. The dog's name was Indiana. Okay. So because the dog's name was Indiana, he took on that name, Indiana Jones. But his real name is Henry Jones Jr. Well, if he passes the whip to somebody else other than Mutt or somebody who's related to him, he's not going to be Indiana Jones unless he takes the name, right? I'm not going to pass it to me. I'd be Dave McCrae. Dave McCrae and the Kingdom of the, you know what I mean? I mean, it wouldn't make any sense, right? So those are things you have to think about. If we're passing the torch, who are we passing it to? And does it feel earned? Does it feel earned? And and we have to solve the problem of the name thing here. Are they just taking Indiana Jones's name because he becomes a legend? And then, okay, but those are questions that need to have answers. Those are things you have to figure out when you're approaching the script. What are we doing? Or like I said, maybe to avoid all that, you do one final Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford. There's no passing of anything. You let it die. And then, down the road, maybe you think about remaking Indiana Jones with a whole new character. And it's not in the same timeline. It's not the same canon. And then you avoid those issues that come up in regards to who are we passing it to and why are we passing it to, and does it feel like they've earned it? You know, because you got to do that all in one movie. You got to do that in one movie. That, you know, I mean, those are issues. Those are the issues I think they're struggling with. I don't think they're struggling with what's the MacGuffin. That's easy, man. I can just go to your history textbooks and your Bibles and your Qurans and your I mean, anything. It's so easy. Those other issues, I think, is what they're struggling with, in my opinion, anyway. Let's see. We'll go a little bit longer here. Nocturnal Toothbrush. I like that name. Nocturnal Toothbrush says, and they straight up name dropped you, Dave McCrae, in their early screening review. I don't know. I don't know. Are you talking about a channel that did a review on me? I'm not sure. Somebody highlight my name and tell me what everybody's talking about. There's so many things going by. I've lost it. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but that's cool. If somebody gave me a shout out, that's always cool. Nerd Report, nuke the fridge again in Indy 5. Yes, nuke the fridge in Indy 5. Lewis, let's do it. Let's do it. And let's get Lewis and I in there. We will be in there running along. We'll get into the fridge. We're like, okay, close, quick. You know, we're getting all in there. That would be amazing. Let's see here. Ryan Buckley says they should just leave the whole thing alone. And maybe they will. Maybe they will. Hey, listen, this quote from Kathleen Kennedy that I read to you earlier in the show does not give me hope that they're this close. When John Kasdan, Lawrence Kasdan's son, about a year and a half ago, began writing a draft of Indiana Jones 5, I was thrilled. I was excited. And I was excited because Lawrence Kasdan wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Lawrence Kasdan and his son helped write Solo. And I think that when you're keeping it in the fam like that, and you have somebody who's his son, who knows the character, who's, you know, I was optimistic. I was more optimistic than David Koepp writing it. Now, David Koepp is a talented screenwriter. You know, he wrote the screenplay for Jurassic Park. He's written the screenplay for a ton of shit. That has been great. But he also wrote the screenplay for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, based on a story that George Lucas wanted to tell. We can't let George off the hook here. But when they announced that David Koepp, I think John Kasdan had left the project, they didn't like what he'd written or something, and now David Koepp is back. And I'm like, but maybe now that George isn't involved, I mean, look, we owe George so much. One of the greatest cinematic innovators of all time. We wouldn't have the technology we have today if it wasn't for George Lucas. 100%. But maybe him not being attached from a story perspective to the Indiana Jones films is a good thing. And maybe that will allow David Koepp to a little more creative freedom to really dive into something that is actually going to be really good. That's always possible. But you know what? But that quote, they're not close. And if you don't even have a script, now apparently David Koepp's been writing this or trying to crack the code, probably all the codes I've been talking about here since last September. But it's February. As far as we know, there's no script. There's a release date of July 2021. If you don't go to camera this summer, you ain't being released in July 2021. I mean, look, and anything's possible, of course, but that's tight, man. That's tight. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss any super chats. I don't think I did. No, I did not. All right, let me see. Swifty the Gamer says there is no Halloween Kills review. It was a test screening. The film could change from now to October. Yes, I agree. Let me see. The Film Addict says, hey, Dave, do you think Henry Cavill would be a great as Indy? He's definitely got the charisma, the charm. I might put Cavill more towards Bond. I think Cavill might be a better Bond. But, you know, I mean, bring Cavill in for an audition maybe. You know, why not? Doesn't hurt. Don't have to choose him just because he's coming in for an audition, right? Yeah, bring him in for an audition, see what he does. He might be a little too ripped, you know, but maybe. Jonathan Nichols says, at Dave McCrae, one of the test screening reviews said that you would love the lighting in Halloween Kills. Drum Dum's mention is, the lighting, right. Yes, I did read about that, that apparently some of the blue lighting has returned. Well, that's good. Hey, maybe they were listening to me. Who knows? Maybe they were listening. Maybe they were like, hey, we gotta please Dave McCrae. We gotta get that fucking shit in there. And it's like, no, I hope that's not why they did it. I hope they came to their senses and realized that it's integral, creating a colder environment for the shape to live in is integral to the shape's mystique and character. That's why. I mean, it's not that I think everything needs to be drenched in blue. I don't want a blue hue over the movie. That's not what I meant when I said I want some low key lighting with a couple of blue or pale blue. It's more of a lightish moonlight blue, like a bluish white. A couple of, gels over their key lights or something. I'm not saying that because because it was in the first movie. I'm saying it because it was in the first movie, because it was integral to the character's mystique, and creating this cold sort of sense of dread and that paleness of everything. If everything's too tungsten and warm, it just I don't know, it doesn't work for me. But hey, we'll see what they do. Danita Brown says there was a mention of you in a post that. Oh, okay. Now everybody's saying either was on Jimmy Champagne or Drum Dum's poster of the day in reference to the Halloween screening. Oh, cool. That's nice. Well, whoever did that, if they're watching, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Let me see. Jay, the movie maker, says, what are your thoughts if Sala or Short Round returns? I think that'd be fun. Well, look, I mean, as long as it feels organic, it doesn't feel shoehorned in. There's a reason why they're there. I'd be okay with it. I think Sala makes the most sense rather than Short Round, but I would be okay with Short Round returning. But you don't want to do what the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did. I think personally, it should have just been Indiana Jones and Marion. I don't think there should have been a son reveal at all. I think it should have just been Indiana Jones and Marion back together again. Indiana Jones has to go to this, the jungle, because Marion's been captured or something and he's got to find her, or he doesn't know who it is. He finds out, my God, it's Marion. And then the two of them are on another adventure together, going back to the roots, bookending it, going full circle. That doesn't mean the rest of the movie would have been good, but I think that would have been better rather than having this ensemble because there were too many characters and I didn't like that. So I think, you don't want to, let's bring back Marion, let's bring back Sulla, Short Round, they have Indiana Jones. Hell, let's bring back, Willie Scott from Temple of Doom. And, it's like, let's think about this for a moment. I think if you were going to bring back anybody, if he was still alive, you'd bring back Marcus, right? He's not alive anymore. You'd bring back him. But next, I think, would be Sulla, because he's the connection to the original film, and he's also a connection to The Last Crusade as well. But I'd be open to seeing Short Round return. I mean, if he's, if you can figure out how to get it in there, okay, sure. Super chat from Zigo RZ Skate 45 says, spit us an AC/DC tune return real quick. AC/DC, well, I can't. Oh, you mean just like they pretend to say it? Oh God, I don't know. Geez, I'm trying to think of, I don't know. I can't think of, why can't I think of anything off the top of my head? I can't think, hang on. Let me get that, yeah, I like that. I like Bon. You know what? Bon Scott's Jailbreak is really good. But to actually do a tune of it, I got to think of the tune, but I can't. Yeah, it goes like Jailbreak. I love Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap too. You guys like Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap? I love Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I used to sing that as a little kid. It was like Dirty Deeds Done Dirt cheap. I used to think that as like a 5-year-old running around. And then of course, when, I listened to the song older, I'm like, what the hell was I running around saying that for? Right. Yeah, I love AC/DC, man. Definitely my favorite band of all time. 100%. 100%. Nocturnal Toothbrush says maybe old Indiana Jones can be a consultant for other treasure hunters. And then, yeah, maybe, but there's always that. But then, is it really an Indiana Jones movie? It's not really an Indiana Jones movie then, right? It's more of an offshoot, right? You got to be so. I get what you're saying. You're trying to figure out ways to justify and to acknowledge that he's this age now, right? And that's the right thing to do. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but I like where your mind frame is and your mindset. I totally understand why you're doing that for sure. Nick Kunda says the problem with the Crystal Skull is it just isn't believable to me. Fair enough, Nick. You need to expand on that though, right? Because that's sort of a blanket statement. People could say that about anything. It's just not believable to me. What isn't believable, Nick? Dive into it. Tell us what isn't believable for you, and tell us why. Tell us why, Nick. The J Hookmaster says, "Hey Dave, did you study the Stanislavski method of acting?" No, I never formally studied it, but we definitely learned about it. Not studied it per se in a formal sense, but we were taught that it exists and what it's all about. It was interesting. It's interesting for sure. That was years ago. My God, that's going back like 20. Well, yeah. I mean, I was in film school in the late 90s, and then I did some acting classes in the early 2000s. So no, that would have been the early 2000s then. Like 2002 maybe. 2002. Probably 2002 when I was 23. Probably somewhere around there. Yeah. The Manhammer AR-15. Dave, what about Harry Cavill? Or Henry Cavill, excuse me. Somebody already mentioned that, and I answered it. Maybe it was you that said it. I don't know. Lauren Downing says, I couldn't make it to Two Dudes and Some Bullshit last night, but wanted to ask you what you and Tony thought of Deadly Friend with Kristy Swanson. I loved that movie when I was a kid. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of Deadly Friend with Kristy Swanson. Fascinating. I've never heard of it. Huh. Well, there you go. Interesting. I'll have to check it out. Thank you for the unintentional, inconspicuous recommendation. I love it. Spidey Skate Skater Boy. That's what it is. Hey Dave, love your content. Glad I made it to this stream. As for Indy 5, just have Indy pass the torch to his son. Let Shia LaBeouf continue. Yeah. I get what you're saying. That seems the most organic, but I think because of the way Shia LaBeouf is, and he's slowly but surely beginning to earn more respect again, not just with fans, but within the industry. But he's not. There are a lot of people that he rubs the wrong way. And I think if you were to suddenly make Shia LaBeouf, Indiana Jones, and whether he would want to be Indiana Jones is another thing. I don't think he's reliable right now. But I understand what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. Okay, let me just scroll back here, make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I don't believe I did. No, I don't think I did. 120 people watching. That's pretty good. That's a lot more than I thought was going to be watching for Indiana Jones. Brandon Gregory says it could just be 2 hours of Shia yelling, "Do it" at the audience. Yes, do it. Do it. Yeah, why not? Let's just do it. 2 hours of that. Ryan Andrew Allen says, Dave, you're heavily involved with fan film projects, but do you have interest in making an original film? 100%, absolutely. Yeah, I wrote a screenplay. I have my own project that's in development hell, and it's called Port Robinson Road, and it's based on a true story from my second year of college years ago, and it is a supernatural mystery thriller drama. Let's put it that way. It's not a horror film per se. There are horror elements to it, but it's based on true events. And that has been in development hell, my own development hell, for a number of years. The script is essentially done. I'm always taking passes over it. It's a feature-length film, and I'm always taking passes over it. But it's a movie that's going to cost a substantial amount of money. I mean, it's not a movie that's going to cost, $30,000 to make. I mean, it's probably a movie that might cost, $2 or $3 million to make. So it's a really cool story that I'm emotionally attached to and invested in. And although it sounds a little cliche, like I'll read the, I believe it should still be there. I added it it was added to IMDb like years ago under a project that I was doing, and it's still sitting there. I think it is still there. It just says announced. This is the summary that is on IMDb in regards to this project. And this is basically what it is. Although that summary may change a bit as we go along. And although it may sound a little cliche at first, I assure you the story is anything but. But anyways, the summary is: after the discovery of an old abandoned farmhouse that is rumored to be haunted, a group of young men and women find themselves captivated by its beauty, its wonder, and its mystery. Many in the group are skeptical at first and believe the house is nothing more than a creepy and deserted place. That is, however, until the night when one of them has a frightening and unusual experience that is not only witnessed by the remaining members, but beg many to question the existence of life after death and consciousness itself. That is the synopsis that's up there right now. So it is definitely something, because it's a baby of mine. It's something that I that I want to direct myself, obviously. So it's a personal project. But beyond that, I do have other short scripts that I've written that are in a folder on my computer that are just waiting to be made or to take another crack at. The ironic thing about It's Me, Billy, which is the Black Christmas fan film that I am in development on. Here's this is a small one sheet of the poster. This is just an 11 by 16. I'm getting larger ones made up eventually. There you go there. It's Me, Billy. This is the Black Christmas fan film that I'm in development on, for those of you that maybe you've been under a rock the last year and don't know about this, with my buddy Bruce, who's also a filmmaker here in Toronto, works in the film industry. The ironic thing about writing It's Me, Billy, and attempting to make this movie, we're launching our Indiegogo campaign probably in April, is although it's a Black Christmas fan film, it really feels like an original piece, because there really isn't anything in this movie that's Black Christmas other than Billy, because and I know you might be thinking, not really. I mean, there is more. Okay, there is more, but it's a sequel that takes place 45 years later, right? So life has moved on, and there is a connection to the past. That's not just Billy. Now, don't get no. There's a connection to the past that isn't just Billy. There's a reason why Billy is back. But it feels like we've written an original film. And so ironically, even though it's the IP's not original, the story is, and it's an original, complete thing. I think Cecil said the same thing about Dylan's New Nightmare. He said, even though the IP is not like, I'm using characters, it's a story that doesn't exist, and there's characters in there that don't exist, so it feels like you're writing an original piece for all intents and purposes. But anyway, yeah, that's the poster there for It's Me, Billy. We are, there we go. We are neck deep in development on that. Very exciting to say the least. And then of course I'm shooting Dylan's New Nightmare come the end of May. Freddy Krueger. I'll be Freddy Krueger in that. Really looking forward to that. Flying to Phoenix and doing that. ZGoRZ Skate 45 says, release your Halloween fan films on Blu-ray. Thoughts? I wouldn't do that, because they're not shot. They're not shot in H. Well, no, the night he came back was HD. But my earlier stuff was not HD, so that would look like garbage. No, I wouldn't do that. The fan films that I have on my channel were experimental fan film, like especially the early stuff. I mean, there's a certain charm to them, and I guess they're sort of iconic in some ways because they were some of the first Halloween fan films online, back in 2009 and 10 and things like that. And I guess that's how a lot of people found my channel. But they're low budget experimental little fan films. That was their intent, because I set out to show filmmakers, independent people that were trying to figure out what to do. I said, you don't, just go out, and if you have a basic understanding of lighting and available lighting and camera angles and that kind of stuff, then you should just go out, just have some fun, just shoot something, and just, and I tried to put together an example of what you can do with essentially nothing. And I think they turned out pretty good, but I would never show them as part of like a portfolio piece. Like I would never show, hey, look, here's no, I wouldn't do that. The night he came back, which was my last major sort of Halloween fan film from about 3 years ago now, almost 4 years ago. I would show that, but just for the cinematography. I think the cinematography is pretty good in that. There's a few things in there I wish I could have changed, but that was a bit higher end. And then, of course, I really like what Bruce and I did with Haddonfield Reaper. I think that was fun because that was shot entirely on a cell phone. But it's Me, Billy. Now, It's Me, Billy is going to be high production value. If we can raise the money, because that's the most important thing. We need to be able to raise it. If you want to see It's Me, Billy a reality, then we're going to need your help, right? Because we need to raise the production budget for that. But that's going to be like Never Hike Alone level production value, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to actually take it to the next level in that regard, because we want to deliver something for you guys that not only we can be proud of, but you guys as Black Christmas fans can be really proud of. Be like, okay, now this is, and depending on how successful it is, and success is determined by, the response, the views, the feedback. If it's successful, there's opportunity for more. Let me just say that. All right. Okay, I got a skedaddle here, but let me just get Nick Kunda says, the aliens seem too cheesy for Indy. Obviously, he gets into a lot of trouble, but aliens seem too far. Also, would you be open to doing a Star Wars film? They seem too cheesy. A lot of people felt that way, man. Yeah, a lot of people felt that the aliens was too cheesy. Ironically, it was in line really with what was going on in the 1950s. You had the Russians and the beginnings of the Cold War. You had science fiction and aliens and alien movies, and alien movies were really popular at that time, especially thanks to Roswell. And it was in line, but I think because we were so used to seeing Indiana Jones in the 30s that it felt a little strange. It felt a little strange. And I can understand that. I can understand that for sure. For me, although I probably wouldn't have done aliens, I think there's more issues than just the aliens, funny enough. But I totally get what you're saying, man. And thank you so much. I appreciate the super chat. Also, would you be open to doing a Star Wars film? Do you mean like being in a Star Wars film, or actually doing a real Star Wars film, or just doing a Star Wars fan film? Hey, if they came to me and said, Dave, we want you to do a real Star Wars film, I'd be like, all right. A Star Wars fan film, ooh, I don't know. That would be a lot of work. That'd be because there are fan films now are legit films. I mean, really, Star Wars fan films are becoming legit short movies. Never Hike Alone was a legit short film. I mean, it wasn't a fan film. It was a legit film. I mean, it's a fan film in terms of the IP, but it was in terms of the production value and the stages you go through. See, that's the thing. Like when you actually set out to make a film, like what Cecil's doing with Dylan's New Nightmare, or what Vince did with Never Hike Alone, or what he's doing now with Never Hike in the Snow, what I'm doing with, It's Me, Billy. When you say to yourselves, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're actually going to do this. And of course, working in the industry helps, obviously. Because you have access to things that the average person might not. But when you start to say to yourselves, okay, now let's make a real movie, there's a different mind frame. There's different stages that you have to go through. It's a lot of work. So if I was to make a legit Star Wars fan film, oh my God, that just would be that would, and they're getting so good now. I love Star Wars, but I don't know if I'd make a Star Wars fan film. I don't know if I would. That just seems like a lot of work. A lot of work. It's the effects. The effects have to be brilliant. Not good, not pretty good, brilliant. I don't know, man. I don't know. Super chat comes in from Drake Riker, says, last one. Why do you think the U.S. was not mad? Last one. Why do you think the U.S. was not at war with the Nazis during the films? Well, the U.S. didn't enter the war of World War II until after the attack on Pearl Harbor, I believe. And the attack on Pearl Harbor, what year was the attack on Pearl Harbor? Was it 1942, 3? I think it was 1940. When was the attack? 42, 43, 41, somewhere? 41. Okay. So World War II began in 1939. Canada, which was a British colony then, entered the war. The British were in the war as well. But the U.S. didn't enter the war till 1941. I'm seeing here. I see 142, but I see more 41. So we'll say 41. That was the catalyst that drove the U.S. into the war. And then, of course, the U.S., along with, Britain and Canada and all that, we all prevailed and won. But Indiana Jones takes place in the 30s. So it takes place before World War II even began. So I think there was always the threat that was there, which is why you see in The Last Crusade, the burning of those books, and Indiana Jones runs into Hitler, and, like that was like a year or two before, shit went down, right? Like the threat was there, but the war hadn't, like Germany hadn't attacked Poland yet. You know what I mean? So that was, it was just before all that, actually. It's before all that. All right, so let me see here. I don't think I missed any super chats. All right, I did not. You guys are amazing. Okay, that is going to do it for me on episode 13 of MCRAE Live. I want to thank everybody who tuned in, who asked questions. Thank you for the super chats as well. You guys are amazing. Thank you for supporting the channel in that way. I really, really appreciate it. I will be back maybe with another one-off video, a standalone video soon. Who knows? Depends on what drops, what news drops in the world of horror and Halloween and movies and shit and what grinds my gears. You never know. But in the meantime and in between time, I definitely will be back on Thursday morning right here at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time for episode 14 of MCRAE Live. So you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday, a great, awesome Wednesday, and I definitely will see you guys on Thursday. And maybe, like I said, maybe I'll come back with another standalone video if something, I feel like I need to talk about something. And, but once that Halloween Kills news starts to heat up, you know where to come. Well, you know where to go too. You got to go to everybody. But if you want to come to me, you can come to me as well. We'll have some tea. We'll have some crumpets. We'll have some juicy chips. Juicy chips. What the hell are juicy chips? I don't know. But anyway, that is going to do it for me. So, have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you guys soon. Alrighty. Cheers.